You got your bead bag and everything.
She needs him.
Okay. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Padjana Ranjana Yashodanandana Padjana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama Rama. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parudikacharya Ashtottara Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parudikacharya Ashtottara Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Thank you for coming. Oh, we got quite a turnout. Capacity crowd. Plus YouTube. Thank you for coming too. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, give me a second here. On this 24th day of May, 2023 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 16, the Divine and Demoniac Natures, page 635, text 22. Uh-oh, you have a different book. The different pagination. Show her the right page. Chapter 16, text 22. Really? Same? Okay. I thought I saw thin margins. You can see the real thin margins. It's a different book. All right. Etar vimuktaha kaunteya tamo dvarais tribhir naraha acharati atmanaha shveyas tato yati param gatim etaiva mukta kaunteya tamo dvarais tribhir naraha acharat yatmanak shveyas tato yati param gatim etaiva mukta kaunteya tamo dvarais tribhir naraha acharat yatmanak shveyas tato yati param gatim etaiva mukta kaunteya tamo dvarais tribhir naraha acharat yatmanak shveyas tato yati param gatim. Do you want to try? Can you chant it? Etaiva mukta kaunteya tamo dvarais tribhir naraha atmanak shveyas tato yati param gatim. Chris, you can do it. I heard you chant. No? Paul? Okay. Etaiva mukta kaunteya tamo dvarais tribhir naraha acharat yatmanak shveyas tato yati param gatim. Paul? Etaiva mukta kaunteya tamo dvarais tribhir naraha acharat yatmanak shveyas tato yati param gatim. Ladies? Etaiva mukta kaunteya tamo dvarais tribhir naraha acharat yatmanak shveyas tato yati param gatim. Etaiva mukta kaunteya tamo dvarais tribhir naraha acharat yatmanak shveyas tato yati param gatim. No? It's all right. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. You okay? I'm okay. Okay. Okay, just one note on pronunciation real quick, because it comes up practically every verse. You see that second line there, the first word, acharat, acharati? Now when I read it as a single word, that Y reverts back to its original form, which is an I. Acharati. If you look in the word by word, you see acharati. We'll read them in a minute. So, but because the next word begins with a vowel, there's various sandhi rules. You know, sandhi. Sandhi means where two words come together. So that I becomes a Y. And it's pronounced as a Y at the beginning of the next word. Acharat yatmana. You see that? You don't add another syllable. Acharat yatmanak shreyas. Acharat yatmanak. So just for future, watch for those I's that became Y's. They're always at the end of the word like that. All right, I'll read the word by word so you can just read along silently. Etai, from these, vimuktaha, being liberated, kaunteya, O son of Kunti, tamaha dvarai, from the gates of ignorance, Tribihi, of three kinds. Naraha, a person. Achadati, performs. Atmanaha, for the self. Shreyaha, benediction. Tataha, thereafter. Yati, he goes. Param, to the supreme. Gatim, destination. Translation. The man who has escaped these three gates of hell, O son of Kunti, performs acts conducive to self-realization and thus gradually attains the supreme destination. And by the word man, Srila Prabhupada means human being. Purport: one should be very careful of these three enemies to human life: lust, anger, and greed. The more a person is freed from lust, anger, and greed, the more his existence becomes pure. Then he can follow the rules and regulations enjoined in the Vedic literature. By following the regulative principles of human life, one gradually raises himself to the platform of spiritual realization. If one is so fortunate, by such practice, to rise to the platform of Krishna consciousness, then success is guaranteed for him. In the Vedic literature, the ways of action and reaction are prescribed to enable one to come to the stage of purification. The whole method is based on giving up lust, greed, and anger. By cultivating knowledge of this process, one can be elevated to the highest position of self-realization. This self-realization is perfected in devotional service. In that devotional service, the liberation of the conditioned soul is guaranteed. Therefore, according to the Vedic system, there are instituted the 4 orders of life and the 4 statuses of life, called the caste system and the spiritual order system. There are different rules and regulations for different castes or divisions of society, and if a person is able to follow them, he will be automatically raised to the highest platform of spiritual realization. Then he can have liberation without a doubt. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, we're coming to the end of this chapter, and Krishna is winding up with a very concise lesson here, the last 4 verses. The last 3 verses. 4 verses. Just to review, the chapter began with a list of divine qualities, qualities that are seen in saints and sages, beginning, and actually when he went through them and explained them, he described how they pertain to different prominent qualities in the different orders of life. The sannyasi, the vanaprastha, the grihastha, and the brahmachari. And, but in general, they are qualities that are conducive to the development of spiritual culture, Krishna consciousness. I think there were 26 of them or so. And then he said, okay, now we've heard of the divine qualities, now let's hear of the demonic qualities. Because by contrast, we want to know what to avoid as well as what to cultivate. And most of the chapter is dealt with that. So, Krishna has described these demonic qualities headed by Damba. The word Damba is very prominent. Damba means pretension. And it often means in demons, pretending to be religious, pretending to be very pious and virtuous, but actually they're criminals in many cases. That because no one wants to, be branded as an outcast and criminal. One likes to be thought of as an upstanding member of society. So these demons, they're very expert at this pretension, Damba. And mana means pride and vanity. Dambo darpa bhimanasta, and like that. And here in this last few verses, he's given the essence of it, what gives rise to all these qualities. These 3 gates leading to hell, Krishna says, because the punishment for being cruel, vicious, selfish, lusty, angry, and greedy, these are demonic qualities, is that one gets it suffers greatly in the next life. You can very likely lose the human form of life. You can be cast down into dog's body, cat's body, or even lower. And you lose the precious higher intelligence of human life. which is the quality that can enable us to finally break out of this bondage of birth and death. The preliminary goal for every human being should be to end this cycle of birth and death that we've been going through since time immemorial. We forget. We certainly can't see our future life, but we also forget our previous life. And so in a society like the modern world, where these basic truths are known about the eternality of the soul and the process of karma and transmigration, which is basic, people just think, this is it. I have one life to live. Isn't it? There's a t-shirt, right? What does YOLO mean? Who's up? You only live once. That's the whole idea. And if we only live once, let's enjoy as much as possible, as soon as possible. You never know what will happen, right? So that's the demonic frame of mind. Is that there's no God in control. Krishna has various verses. Asatyam apatishtam te jagadahu anishwaram aparaspadasambhutam kimanyat kama haitikam. The demons say there's no ultimate truth. Asatyam. Apatishtam te. There's no ground of being, there's no source of everything, certainly not a person. Jagadahu anishwaram. They declare with great pride and absolute surety there's no ultimate God in control. Anishwaram. There's no ultimate cause. Because if there is, that means that there can be a reckoning for their activities. In other words, there's a judge, right? And they don't want to know that. They don't want that. They want to believe that they're free to act as well as they can, get as much pleasure as they can, and then die and it's all over. Unfortunately, it's not that way. It's not that way. We were never born and we will never die. I have this little poem that I made up. It gives like a... Every body dies. Now, you have to, that's this, we see it. We each have a body, and every one of them is going to die. So that's every space, body dies. Everybody dies, nobody dies. Wake up, and open your eyes. You're not that body, you're a pure spirit soul. Chant the holy name and attain life's goal. That encompasses a lot of the basic philosophy of Krishna consciousness. But people don't believe that. They certainly, everyone knows and believes that they'll die, everybody dies, but no one believes that nobody dies. You're going to see the difference? In other words, they think that the body is the self. That's the main fallacy of material life in general and demonic life in particular. So these demonic qualities, they induce one to embrace these three: kama, krodha, and lobha. Now, kama doesn't just mean sex desire. It means any powerful material desire. It encompasses kama. You see what I'm saying? It can be, lust for fame, certain, like that, or for some material sensation like drugs come. That can also be kama, strong desire, material desire. So, and then when that's frustrated, you become angry. Someone standing in the way of my pleasure, you can become enraged. As Krishna said in the second chapter, I'm not going to review it again, I did last night, that you can do things that you would never ordinarily do. And you may regret for the rest of your life. You commit some crime, you killed someone, and oh, what have I done? It's too late. This is anger. You lose your intelligence. Very powerful force. And then lobha. Lobha means more and more. It's like an intoxicant. The more money I have. Everyone knows today there's a few famous names, over $100 billion. What in heaven's name can they do with all that money? Oh, let's shoot up a rocket, blow it up, and there goes $1 billion like that. It's sick. You realize what good that can use? We could build 1,000 temples of Krishna with $1 billion or more, And these are like hospitals where you can cure the soul, where you can the greatest cure of the material disease is available in these temples of Krishna, and where the actual principles of devotional service are being taught and practiced. So it's so much good. So that's what greed is, more and more and more and more. Now there's a verse describing how greed is good. Not in the way that in that crazy movie that became many. Greed for money and things is not good, but greed for Krishna is essential for a success ultimately. Can we take that Bhagavad Gita, and it shouldn't really be placed on a place where you sit. You can just put it up on, yeah. Okay, yeah, well, now it's still in a place where we sit. So, yeah, just put it under your Gita. You have room on there. Yeah. Put it under the one you're reading. So anyway, this, where was I? Oh, yes. So, there's a verse, and it's interesting because the first line of this verse is the source of the phrase Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is something that Prabhupada came up with when he came to America, and I'll tell you why. Because back in the 60s, when Prabhupada was pioneering the movement in New York City, he first started uptown. Now, I'm familiar with Manhattan because I grew up in Long Island, so I know. So the Manhattan itself has different areas that have different influences and are different. Like the Upper East Side, that's where very wealthy people live up there. The Upper West Side is where there's more experimenting in culture and people. It's a little different. But the Lower East Side, at that time especially, it was the hippie era, and that meant inevitably experimentation with the LSD drug. Now, the LSD drug is not just an intoxicant. It also does something to your brain. I'm not recommending it, and ultimately it's very harmful. But it did to open up people's idea about God and spirit and so forth, to having all these hallucinations. So it eventually became very damaging and difficult. But in that period, there were some very famous people like Allen Ginsberg and others who were experimenting, So consciousness was everywhere. Cosmic consciousness, the word consciousness was a big thing. So Prabhupada picked up on that and said, Kṛṣṇa consciousness is really what it should be like. And that stuck, And he took inspiration from this verse that I'm going to share with you, which was originally written by one of Lord Chaitanya's most intimate associates and advanced devotees. Some of you have read the Chaitanya Charitamrita. His name was Ramananda Roy. He wasn't a Brahmin, he wasn't a sannyasi, he was a householder, but he was very advanced in the highest esoteric reaches of the Radha Krishna worship. And he was one of Lord Chaitanya's most intimate associates for the last 16 years when he stayed in Jagannath Puri. So here's the verse he wrote about greed. He says, Krishna bhakti rasabhavatamati kriyatam yadikutopi labbhite. Tatta lauryam api mulyamekalam janma koti sukatayana labbhite. Now that first line means Krishna bhakti, devotion to Krishna, rasa. Now rasa is indefinable. There's no synonym in English. But we all experience rasa. When a child or mother loves a child, there's a rasa there. There's a feeling that's unique to that particular relationship. The love, Prabhupada said, this love is the most closest thing to the selfless love in the spiritual world. Because the mother is not looking for anything from the child. Just that the child be pleased and happy and healthy. If the child is well fed and warm and healthy, and she sees, and he smiles a little bit at the mother, no teeth yet coming in, the mother, the whole day is made, right? I've never had a child but I've seen, like that. So that's a rasa. A rasa means a feeling relationship. And rasas can be categorized, like friend to friend. That's a certain rasa, it's characterized. Servant to master. It doesn't have to be slave. It doesn't have to be servitude. Prabhupada used the word servitude to mean service, but actually servitude means slavery. It's not a very nice rasa, But service, when the master really respects the servant wants to see the master, it's a relationship. Certainly friend to friend, parent to child, and lover to lover. That's another rasa. There's 5 rasas. One is Shanta ras, just waiting for Krishna to get, like the flute. His flute doesn't actually do anything, but it's always ready there, to be played. That's a kind of Shanta ras. So anyway, here in this verse, you say, Krishna bhakti rasa bhavitamati. Krishna bhakti rasa means any of those 5 rasas in relation to Krishna. When the mind is experiencing that, bhavitamati, that is the highest level of existence. And that will take one to the spiritual world to enjoy that eternally. Because it's spiritual. It's not based on this fallible temporary body or the senses or anything like that. So, Krishna Bhakta Dasa Bhavatamati, Kriyatam Yadikatopi Labhite. So he says, if you can buy this somewhere, you should buy it in the marketplace. You know, as if it's some commodity. But you have to have the price. And what is the price? Your ardent desire for it. That's all. How do you develop a desire? You have to hear about it, and you have to be blessed by Krishna, by the practice of devotional service. And then you become more and more eager to experience it. So that kriyatam tatra laulyam, laulyam is the word for greed, is the only mulyam. It's a play on word. Laulyam is mulyam, mulyam is the price. Tatra laulyam mulyam Krishna Bhakti Dasa Bhavatamati kriyatam yatikatopi labhite tatta laulyam abhimulyam ekalam janma koti sukatana labhite. You may have millions of births of pious activities, you know, material piety. And you may go to heaven, you may get, you know, good material. But that's not going to suffer. You're not going to get it. You have to practice bhakti as it's outlined here to awaken that desire. And when it's strong enough, Krishna will bless you with it. So it's all dependent on desire. Here we're just Trivadam Nadakasedam, text 21. This is kama, that's powerful material desire, just the opposite of spiritual desire. I want to be the enjoyer. The spiritual desire means I'm passionate. I'm so mad to see Krishna happy, not myself. That's the gopis. That's Radharani. She'll do anything. You know, it's not like an ordinary affair. Lord Chaitanya describes it at the end of the CC, and he's giving his commentary on the Shikshastika. And Radharani has a little soliloquy there. And one of the things she says, because everyone knows, you know, Krishna loves her the most, she loves Krishna. But if Krishna wants to be with some other gopi, then I'll go take that gopi's hand and bring her to Krishna. Not a touch of jealousy, you see? Because it's for Krishna's pleasure. Now, this is, you know, false ego is saying, no, what's in it for me? You know, I'm going to see Krishna, okay, what's in it? This is, you have to understand the philosophy. In the Vedanta Sutra, which means the aphorisms embodying the essence of all the Vedic wisdom, there's one sutra that says, Anandamayo Bhyasat. These are just a few words, they're aphorisms. So it needs explanation. This means that God, the absolute truth, is always filled with ananda. And we can tell by his activities. Abhyasat means practice as he lives. Now, we can't say that about ourselves. We're not always filled with even ordinary happiness, but this becomes ananda. But it's possible. It's possible when we dovetail our lives, our desires with Krishna. So in other words, as Krishna says right in the last chapter, Mamai Vangso Jiva Loka Jiva Buddha Sanatana, every living entity in this world, not just human being, but every living entity that exists is part and parcel of me. Meaning just like a drop of ocean water, just like a sun ray. A sun ray is very minute, right? Sun is vast, vast, vast. But the sun ray has a little bit of heat and light. The sun has infinite heat and light. The ocean has infinite water. We're like drops. We have the chemicals. We're also a little salty. The drop is salty. Similarly, we are by nature full of ananda, but we can experience that by dovetailing ourselves with the Supreme Lord and his activities. Then our happiness can know no bounds. And that's why devotees who are sincerely chanting and practicing, you know, they have a certain glow and bliss about them because that's not ordinary. And it doesn't fade with time. You know, it's not that, oh, now I'm so old, you know, I can't enjoy my senses anymore. No, you can Hare Krishna, Krishna. You know, as long as you can think of Krishna and chant a little bit, you can be blissful. We saw with Srila Prabhupada. Yes, he got older, of course, and his health was fading, but he was never morose. You know, he'd hear the kirtan, he'd see the devotees, they would come to him, and he would be blissful, even at the very end of his manifest existence. It's amazing to read Prabhupada Lilamrita. So anyway, back to our verse here, because I want to try to complete this. So here he's saying there's these three gates leading to hellish life: lust, anger, and greed. Therefore one should give them up. And then the verse we read today, one who is free of those, etavamukta konteya, tamo dvarais, the doors to darkness, tamo dvarais, those three, the human being. Acharatyaatmana shreyas. Now this is a very important phrase. Acharati means behavior. The word acharya, which is quite famous, means a person who's ideal in his behavior. The three qualifications. He knows the Shastra, the scripture, very thoroughly, lives his life, his or her life according to it, and teaches others. Those three things. And Srila Prabhupada was the ideal acharya. You know, and we have a whole disciplic succession of acharyas. We have mana. So acharat means behaves, does things for the soul, for the ultimate good of the soul, if you've escaped those three gates, you know, by the process of bhakti. And then what happens? Tato yati padam gatim. You go to the highest goal, Goloka Vrindavan, back home, back to Godhead. In other words, you complete the course. You no longer do you ever take birth in a material body again to suffer old age and disease. You're in your eternal spiritual body. It's real. In the second canto, there's a little table of contents, believe it or not, in a couple of verses in the I think it's the 10th chapter. One of the subject matters of the Bhagavatam, there's 10 of them, I won't go into it, but one of them is mukti. Now mukti is a famous phrase. The impersonalists are always talking about mukti, liberation. And liberation is important. We want to get liberated from bondage of birth, old age, disease, and death, you see. But how to do it? What is the definition of mukti? It's not completely denying personality and form and experience and just merging as consciousness into the ultimate consciousness, the white light of Brahman. No, that's not real mukti. That's fake mukti, because ultimately it's not fulfilling to the soul. Krishna, we are part and parcel of Krishna. He's a person, he has activities, he has senses. We also have those things ultimately, spiritual. But they're covered over by the matter now, you see. So when we get liberated from material body, it doesn't mean that we just become pure consciousness with no varieties. That's the nirvishesha that Srila Prabhupada is saving us from. Anyway, this is, for those who know the nirvishesha, shunyavadi, paschatya deshatarine. Nirvishesha means no details, no senses, no activities, no nothing, just pure consciousness, finally the bliss of Brahman. It's not satisfying. In the Bhagavatam it says, no, you ultimately fall down from that. But if you can be reinstated in your Swarup siddhi, in other words, the original form, that's what mukti is. Muktir hitpa anyata rupam swarupena vyavastiti. Mukti means giving up all these false forms. This is not our form, whatever was sitting in a body here. It's always changing. Which one is it? Is it our 5-year-old body, 10-year-old body, 20-year-old? I'm sitting in a 75-year-old body. Is this my real form? No. It's just a machine, an incredibly complex machine, which houses the spirit soul. And the purpose of it is Acharatyaatmanakshayas, that we can learn how to perform activities for the ultimate benefit of the soul, so that tato yati padam gatim. At the end of this particular term of life in this body, we go back to God and we don't have to get another one. So what is the means of doing that? So the next verse, I'd like to just do the next verse, because then he goes back and forth. You learn by contrast. Now he's saying what not to do. And he introduces the idea of Shastra. Shastra, the source of knowledge, which is the external manifestation of the super soul. And Krishna is speaking to us directly here. So what does he say? Text 23. Yak Shastra Vidnamutsrijya Vartate Kamakarataha Nasasiddhim Avapnoti Nasukam Naparam Gatim. He or she who discards scriptural injunctions and acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection nor happiness nor the supreme destination. So here's the alternative purport. As described before, the Shastra Vidhi, or the direction of the Shastra, that's scripture, is given to the different castes and orders of human society. Everyone is expected to follow these rules and regulations. If one does not follow them and acts whimsically according to his lust, greed, and desire, then he never will be perfect in his life. In other words, a man may theoretically know all these things, but if he does not apply them in his own life, then he is to be known as the lowest of mankind. In the human form of life, a living entity is expected to be sane and to follow the regulations given for elevating his life to the highest platform. But if he does not follow them, then he degrades himself. But even if he follows the rules and regulations and moral principles and ultimately does not come to the stage of understanding the Supreme Lord, then all his knowledge becomes spoiled. And even if he accepts the existence of God, if he does not engage himself in the service of the Lord, his attempts are spoiled. Therefore, one should gradually raise himself to the platform of Krishna consciousness and devotional service. It is then and there that he can attain the highest perfectional stage, not otherwise. The word kama karataha is very significant. A person who knowingly violates the rules acts in lust. He knows that this is forbidden, but still he acts. This is called acting whimsically. He knows that this should be done, but still he does not do it. Therefore he is called whimsical. Such persons are destined to be condemned by the Supreme Lord. Such persons cannot have the perfection which is meant for the human life. The human life is especially meant for purifying one's existence. And one who does not follow the rules and regulations cannot purify himself, nor can he attain the real stage of happiness. So this is now he's introduced this idea of Shastra. Shastra Vidi. This Shastra Vidi means the instructions of the scripture. And in this case we have the best scripture. This is spoken by Krishna himself. And here he says, Utsrija, one who disregards them or discards them, and continues, vartate, continues to act, remains acting according to the dictations of lust, kama karata, or material desire. Then what's the fate? Nasasiddham, one does not get perfection, avapnoti, does not get happiness, and certainly does not go to the supreme goal. So therefore, in the final verse, he describes one should act rationally and embrace the Shastra as the pramana for how we should act and how we should refrain from acting. Because everyone is, what does life consist of? Doing one thing and not another, right? And on what basis do we do one thing and not another? Mostly on the basis of the senses. Or if we're a little intelligent, okay, I'll forego immediate sense gratification, I'll study hard, I'll get a degree, I'll get a great job, and then I'll enjoy. Then I'll make so much money and I can... So the sense gratification is the overall impetus for action. That has to be discarded. We have to have a new impetus for action or motivation, and that motivation should be purification and ultimately to enter into the highest enjoyment of service to the Lord, service to God. That's really what bhakti is all about. So this is such an important verse, and these 4 verses are so important. Therefore, when you see a verse beginning, therefore, it's the end of an argument, right? Therefore, shastram pramanam te. Pramana. What does it say pramana means? Evidence. Therefore, one should accept the Shastra, the scripture, as given by these authorities like Srila Prabhupada, as a pramanam, as karya vyavastato, to establish what to do and what not to do. Karya and akarya, duty and forbidden activities, to determining. And having determined them, gyatra shastra, one knows it, then one should actually act according to them. In other words, you don't just study and you know the Shastra back and forth, but you're just teaching it in school, in Eastern religion, and your own life you don't follow. That also happens. No, you should embrace it as the life-transforming instruction. Karma karta miharasi, do it as a matter of duty. This idea of duty is important. Duty usually is imposed by a higher authority, you see. Now if you accept it, in other words, willingly, the injunctions of the Shastra, that's means, okay, I accept it. Just like Arjuna in his situation, his gut reaction was he didn't want to fight, or what to speak of, kill his beloved grandfather Bhishma Dev. He took the role of grandfather when Pandu died suddenly, and the boys, 6, 7, 8 years old, they didn't have any protector. So he helped in and to help Kunti raise them like that. So he was a beloved figure. He's on the other side. So of course he doesn't want to kill him. He had his teacher on there, Dronacharya, who trained him, in military arts. And many friends and relatives were on the opposite side. That's in the first chapter. You'll find he looks over and said, oh, I can't fight them. Even if I win the kingdom, it'll be soaked with their blood. How can I enjoy this kingdom? Let me just go to the forest. I'll give it all up. He even dropped his bow, if you recall, and sat down on the chariot, right? He was paralyzed On one side, he knows Krishna wants him to fight, and on the inside, he knows it's the right thing to do. But he has all of these countervailing emotional things, so he's confused. So he's representing us. We want to do something here, but we know it's not good for us. Even on a material level, we know that. Is it good? Am I going to really hang out with these people? Well, I know that they drink a lot. I like them, but there's like all of this decision. And if you make a certain decision, it can have great ramifications for your life. I don't have to outline it all. So life is like that. But what's the pramana? What's the ultimate judgment that we accept, the instruction, and what's to be gained in each activity? If I go with them and I get into that crowd and I start taking drugs or drinking or something, then I may have some pleasure at first, but I know that ultimately it'll be bad for me. But if that voice is weak and you get influenced by these lower modes, then life can take a very bad turn for you. So therefore, accepting the Shastra by good association as, all right, it's going to be a little hard for me to do this. I know when we should get serious, some of us, we join the ashram, we join the temple. In the old days, you had to be part of the Hare Krishna, you join up, Otherwise, you're outside, But now, of course, most of the members of the movement live outside. It's not a big deal. It's what you're doing with that life. So, I like to tell this story. Forgive me, some of you have heard it before. Because it's kind of austere, I joined in late March in New York, and it's cold. It's cold out there. I mean, this is nothing, Anyway, this is crazy weather we've had. 50s in May, forget it. But that's what we have. But there it's like still in the 40s outside, And the temple didn't always have enough heat. And then you get up at 3:30 in the morning and you have to take a cold shower. Oh, are you kidding? Can I really do that? But you already made the decision to join the temple, so what are you going to do? So I'm standing in line waiting to take the cold shower, and there was no heat. And I said, if I don't take this cold shower, then I have to leave the temple because this is part of what it is. So I had a special trick because I had done some hatha yoga and with breathing, and there's a breathing called the heating breathing. I don't know if you ever heard. It works. And then when I got into that shower, it was the quickest shower I ever took. It was about 16 seconds, soap up, and I got out, I dried off. Oh, I made it, I can stay in the temple. But I mean, that's just an example. There's so many challenges. But if you're determined and you surrender to it, and after a while it becomes second nature. It's not a big austerity anymore. It's kind of, okay. And we learn, and it's true, the early hours, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock are really good for practicing spiritual life because there's no confusion, there's not as much distraction. And it's just, so, and life as a devotee is full of those things. Accepting a challenge, going through it, is being some austerity, and then seeing, oh, it's so helpful. I've now got rid of this unwanted desire, unwanted passion. I don't need to do that, First thing is meat eating. Most of us, I was actually a vegetarian when I joined. But this cuisine, the samosas and the pakoras and the prasadam, after a while I said, I don't need all that, I don't need meat at all. It becomes, and Krishna, blessed food. So Krishna consciousness, this is a practical and relatively easy system of yoga. When you see the alternative, chapter 6, go alone, sit alone, control the mind, breathing, and the eight steps of yoga. No one's going to do that. A very small minority, and even those who try probably will fail. But anyone can come in, join the kirtan, chant Hare Krishna, and make tremendous advancement. It's a special benediction for this age. Kala dosha nide rajan asti eko mahadgunad kirtanad Krishnasya mukta sangha param bhajet. In the 12th canto of the 12 cantos of the Srimad Bhagavatam, right near the end, There's a whole list of the evils of this age of Kali, how we won't live as long, the quality of mercy will gradually decrease, and there won't be enough food, and the government will be full of demons who will just tax the people and oppress them. We're seeing that in various parts of the world right now, But there's one very special quality in this age. Kirtanadeva Krishnasya mukta sangha padam bhajet. By the process of Sankirtan of Krishna's holy name, one can become mukta sangha. This very important word. It means free of the passions and attachments that are binding us to this world. The knots in the heart is called. One can break them and become attached to Krishna and param bhajet, and go back to Godhead by really embracing this process of kirtan. That's the basis of it. All of the other aspects, they support that, your chanting, and make the chanting that much more effective. So we're very fortunate, and this verse is so important. Therefore, one should accept the Shastra, the scripture, the words of God, as one's evidence for what to do and what not to do. And having understood that, one should act in such a way as a matter of duty. And if you do it as a matter of duty, after some time it becomes pleasurable to act that way. No one has to, force me to memorize a verse and chant. It's just pure pleasure. I'll give you a sample. These are our acharyas, the 6 Goswamis. They wrote oceans of wonderful literature. Bhagavatam itself is filled with incredible, beautiful verses. And these verses, just like these Bhagavad Gita verses, they serve as Prabhupada said, they're all mantras that you can chant for purification. And they all have this wonderful content. So I'll give you an example, and this enjoyment, it's never, never grows old. These verses are very fresh. One very simple verse anyone can learn from the Krishna Karnamrita. You look at the deity or even a picture of Krishna. Madhuram madhuram vapadasya vibhor. Madhuram madhuram vadanam madhuram. Madhugandhi madhusmitame tadaho. Madhuram 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 madhuram. Sweet, sweet is my dear Lord's form. Sweeter still his face so fair. But his honey-scented gentle smile is sweet beyond compare. Krishna is all attractive, never gets old. And if you can absorb your mind in thinking of Krishna in that way and remember the holy name. And the inconceivable thing, but this is true, the name of Krishna and Krishna are non-different. If you chant the name Krishna again and again, and you listen, you carefully, you're associated with Krishna. You're becoming purified. Just one utterance, this is straight from the Shastra, one utterance of the holy name without offense, you obliterate all your sinful reactions. And you're sure to take another human birth and continue your bhakti. That's in the Shastra. It's such a blessing, benediction. What to speak of repeated chanting, perfecting the chanting, so that you're experiencing Krishna's presence, his leela, his qualities, just by remembering him. It's an incredible truth, and people don't know. Hardly anyone knows. But Prabhupada, through great effort, he made it everyone can know. And it's all over the world. So I'll give you one more verse. This is about the holy name. Lord Chaitanya wrote. It's worth reviewing. The first verse of the Shikshastaka. Cheto darpanamarjanam pavamahadabhagni nirvapanam shreya kaidavachandukapatadanam vidyavadhu jivanam anandam pradivardhanam pradipadam purnamita swadanam sarvatmasnapadam padam vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. A lot of information packed in there. All glories to the chanting of Shri Krishna's holy names, which easily extinguishes samsara's blazing flames by polishing the lust-encrusted mirror of the heart. That chanting is the waxing moon that knows the secret art of causing the white lotus of good fortune to unfurl its petals far and wide throughout this bleak and blighted world. Of transcendental knowledge which will take us to life's goal, the chanting of the name of Krishna is the life and soul. The ocean of ecstatic bliss floods far beyond its bounds wherever Krishna's merciful and mystic name resounds. Indeed, whenever Krishna's names are sung in congregation, at every step one tastes a joy that knows no limitation. So hear with great attention as I earnestly request, please chant Shri Krishna's holy names and be supremely blessed. The soothing nectar of the name will bathe your consciousness, bestow pure love for Krishna, and eradicate distress. And this verse is written by Krishna in the form of Lord Chaitanya, the same personality. And then he goes on to explain the practice and the goal of chanting. Now, I don't like to blow my own horn, but if you want, back in 2005, I was in Mayapur, and I had, because I poeticized this whole eight verses. And I didn't know it was being recorded, but they got me to chant the whole thing, 8 verses. And I had some famous musician. Any of you have you heard of Vyasaki? Yeah, he was next to me playing the harmonium. And then behind me, there was another famous individual named Radhanath Swami. And then there was another one named Indra. He was there. And one who's maybe a little less famous, but very prominent, Sachinandan Swami was there. Anyway, there was a whole crew, and there I was. I muffed a few lines, you know, I forgot it. But it was, and then there was a whole bunch of Bengalis who would chant. They would chant in between. I'd have a little kirtan, and they had these 2 little deities. One fellow was carrying on his head. It was quite a scene. So it's all there. So now, if you wanted a little, see what you think. You can come back and tell me what you think. You type in the search bar for YouTube, Dravida, space, Mayapur. Mayapur. And you get that thing. After all these years, big deal. I have 20,000 hits. Some these kirtanias 4.5 million, you know, but that's something. So anyway, and I have all that poetry in a file. I can give it to you. I have a little poem for Prabhupada, and then we have to. Oh, Prabhupada, we hail the day when you appear, just like a ray of Krishna's vast effulgence bright, to give this blind world back its sight. We thank you from the bottom of our heart and pray with deepest love that we may serve your lotus feet in every circumstance we meet. As years go by and books go out, we see what life is all about. To serve your mission and our Lord's by spreading wide your sacred words. As well, you want us all to strive to let those words direct our lives. This safest path will lead us home, no more in Maya's realm to roam. Okay, let's have a kirtan. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Look, it's not my fault. You all came in a group. Usually we had 3 or 4. Now we have 10, 12, so we got a little bit carried away.